Identifying ancient artifacts is an acquired skill, and to acquire it, you have to go through years of study and then even more years of on-the-job training. Even then, though, you will often find yourself running into difficulties trying to identify the things you are looking at. There's simply no good rational explanation for some of the things you will see in this video, but we will try to provide you with one anyway. Kill-a-kiss mummies. We are going to start off by talking about mummies, but not the Egyptian kind you are probably thinking of. Instead, let's look at some North American mummies. This incredibly well-preserved human remains come from Nuuk in Greenland and are known as the kill-a-kiss stock mummies. They are a little unsettling to look at, and we imagine they must have been even more unsettling for the brothers who found them when they went out grouse hunting for the day in 1972. The brothers are thought to have been the first people in the years to enter the abandoned Inuit settlement of Killikissak. And it's there that they found the 8 human bodies buried under a pile of stones. It's highly unlikely that whoever buried them intended to mummify them. It just happened automatically because of Greenland's icy climate. Experts were hastily summoned to the site, where they confirmed that the brothers had found the remains of 6 adult women plus 2 children, all of whom perished together around the year 1475. All of them were covered in tattoos, which even covered their faces. The reason they passed away is unknown but somewhat gruesome. It appears that the youngest child may have been buried alive. Ostrich globe. Nowadays, if you want to make a globe or a map of the world, all you must do is consult pictures taken from space or pictures taken by planes and drones, if you want to include finer details. Hundreds of years ago, that wasn't possible, and so the appearance of the world on one globe might differ dramatically from the appearance of the world on another. With that in mind, we think that this might be one of the first ever globes of the New World. By this we mean a world map created after the discovery of the American continent that makes it a very special artifact, but 2 further points make it even more fascinating. The first one is that we have no idea who created it. The second one is that it's been carefully etched onto the shell of an ostrich egg. As was the case with many world maps of the time, monsters have been drawn in the sea, possibly based on the fanciful stories of sailors returning from long voyages. There are even some rumors that the globe was crafted in the workshop of Italian master Leonardo da Vinci during the early 1500s, although without any supporting evidence we can't confirm that story. Sandstones. During the height of the Vietnam War II, priceless ancient sandstone artifacts were stolen from Thailand and taken back to the USA. In May 2021, the artifacts finally found their way back home again. The beautifully carved sandstone blocks are known as lentils and would once have been used as temple support beams. The images on these surfaces include representations of Hindu gods Yama and Indra. It's always a difficult task for scientists to provide a date for a stone artifact, but in the case of these lentils, it's considered likely that they were created in either the late 10th or early 11th century. According to experts in Thailand, the lentils are especially valuable because they demonstrate the influence that the ancient kingdom of Khmer had on the regions around it. Temples that use lentils like this were almost exclusively Cambodian in either design or inspiration. The artifacts were taken by unknown hands in 1958, but authorities in Thailand aren't interested in finding out who stole them. They are just glad to have them back. Ada. You can find all manner of string things in the desert. On that topic, meet Ada, the 6-inch high skeleton from the Atacama Desert that some people believe is the body of a tiny alien. To make it even creepier, the skeleton was found in the churchyard of a deserted town called La Noraya. Testing on the skeleton has revealed that it's less than 100 years old, but so far, we have been unable to say who or where it came from conclusively. Scientists looking for a rational explanation have tried to write it off as a non-viable human fetish, but that wouldn't explain the strange cranium of the body. Another theory is that it's the body of a human who suffered from chronic dwarfism, but the smallest living human ever recorded was 4 times larger than this. Researchers at Stanford University were given 6 whole months to study the body in 2003, but even after all that time, they could not come up with a satisfactory explanation for its existence. It's not a hoax, but we may never know what species or race little Ada belongs to. Slave's skeleton. Historians often assume that the ancient Romans used to keep slaves during their occupation of Britain, but direct evidence of that has always been hard to find. That changed in April 2021 when a startling discovery was made in Great Castor-on-Rutland by builders working on a home extension. Imagine how short they must have been when they came across the shackled skeleton of a man buried deep below the house. The unfortunate individual was buried in a ditch with iron fetters attached to his ankles. It's the only known Roman-era example of someone being buried this way. Archaeologists have been able to use radiocarbon dating to demonstrate that he was buried somewhere between the 3rd and 4th centuries. It's thought that shackles were usually removed from enslaved people before burial so they could be reused. So this man must have done something very unusual to justify being buried. Perhaps it's a symbolic punishment for something he did in his lifetime, aimed at ensuring that he remained shackled during the afterlife. On the other hand, maybe it's not what it appears to be. A few ancient Roman manuscripts claim that the dead were sometimes shackled to ensure that they did not rise again to torment the living. So it's possible that this is evidence of that practice rather than anything to do with slavery. Stone artifacts. Our next discovery was made in Puerto Rico and might represent the first evidence of a previously unknown civilization. The discovery is a set of 800 finely carved stone artifacts. Each of them was crafted roughly 600 years ago. They were first found by archaeologists in the 19th century, but were not properly studied until 2019. It was one start that figurines were a hoax, but scientific analysis has confirmed that the carvings were created during either the 14th or 15th century. Under a microscope, it's possible to determine that the figurines were once covered in gold and red paint. No artifacts like this have ever been found in this region of America before. Some of the markings on their surfaces have been interpreted as a form of writing, but this is a controversial interpretation that will require more evidence before it can be proven. No known pre-Columbian writing systems like this exist elsewhere. The markings don't resemble any kind of markings known to have been used by the Maya or the Aztecs, so scientists have no idea whom to credit with their creation. Legend has it that the statuettes were found by a Puerto Rican monk called Jose Maria Nazario, but there's no evidence that he ever existed. Swan pot. Archaeologists are used to finding animal-shaped pots and vases inside ancient Chinese tombs, but this swan-shaped pot came with a riddle that experts are yet to get to the bottom of. The previously undisturbed pot contains a 2,000-year-old liquid, and we currently have no idea what the fluid is. The discovery arrived almost by accident. It came when construction workers in San Maxia in the Henan province came across all previously unknown graves and called in the experts to take a closer look. Along with the swan pot, they also found a bronze helmet, an iron sword, and a jade ceremonial sword, so this was likely the final resting place of a soldier or warrior. The pot, though, is somewhat incongruous with the rest of the discoveries. It's the only bronze pot ever found in this part of China, and so that, coupled with the fact that it contains an unidentifiable liquid, has got archaeologists very excited. The fluid, of which there were around 3,000 milliliters, has been described as yellowish-brown and containing impurities. It could be anything from ancient wine to the fabled and long sought-after Chinese elixir of life. Boxing gloves. Boxing has been around as a sport for almost if humans have walked the earth. It seems that there have always been athletes willing to fight each other for supremacy, and there have always been crowds willing to cheer them on too. The earliest references we have to boxing as a sport date back 3,000 years to ancient Egypt, but a recent discovery in Northumbria, England, has proven that the ancient Romans were fans of the sweet science too. Found at the region's Vindaloo-Roman fort, these two leathery lumps are primitive boxing gloves, and they are around 1,900 years old. Although we know that the Romans enjoyed boxing, these are the only two surviving gloves that have ever been found. It's thought that different units within the Roman army would battle each other in boxing matches for bragging rights and supremacy, although it was also known that their friends enjoyed gambling on the outcome of the contests too. This pair was well worn and loved. Their owner thought enough of them to patch them up rather than throw them away. Wooden game board. A very long time ago, the residents of Norway were so addicted to playing gambling games that the king had to make them illegal. Many of the game pieces and boards involved in these games were destroyed at the time, but some were found in Oslo's medieval park in March 2022. There, archaeologists have found a wooden game board, 3 soapstone pieces from an unknown game, and what appears to be a chess piece. It's impossible to be certain about what kind of game might have been played with these pieces, but some experts have speculated that it might have been an early medieval version of backgammon. The carving was a common skill in Norway at the time, so the pieces could have been made by anybody, rich or poor, old or young. People would play these games and place wagers on them while drinking beer, and social unrest caused by all of this drinking and gambling prompted King Magnus Lagabötes to ban all gambling in Oslo in 1276. Scientists think that gambling at the time was so prevalent that players might even have been addicted to the dopamine hit that came with winning, which is why these artifacts have been described in the press as the game pieces of Norwegian dope addicts. Sarisukta, better known to the world as the Burnt City, is one of the oldest settlements in Iran. It's easily the largest too, and certainly the most mysterious burnt city is now a UNESCO World Heritage Site, but even the people who awarded it that lofty status doesn't truly understand the city's history. It was abandoned suddenly for unknown reasons just under 4,400 years ago, with its people leaving behind very little for us to remember them by. Archaeologists have been digging through Sarisukta for years, and in December 2021, they found a collection of figurines representing humans and animals. Most of the figurines look like cows, but there is something odd about the human figures. The men are always depicted as standing, and the women are always depicted as sitting. This might suggest that women were subservient to men in this society, or it could suggest that women sat on the throne and men stood by to attend to them. We simply don't know enough about Bond City to say either way. Only around 4% of the old city has been fully excavated as of 2022, so perhaps the answer lies in the remaining 96%. Lizard sculptures. Why is it that so many cultures from around the world, including some that still exist today, believed in the existence of all-powerful lizard people? The oldest known representation of these humanoid lizards comes from Tel al-Ubaid in Iraq, where archaeologists unearthed a collection of 7,000-year-old lizard sculptures at the start of the 20th century. Our struggle to understand their meaning is tied up with our lack of knowledge about the Ubaidian culture. We know that they emerged in Mesopotamia around 8,000 years ago, but as with the Sumerians, we have no idea where they came from. However, we do know that they created large villages of mud brick houses and displayed agricultural and architectural skills that were way beyond the standards of their time. The lizard figurines they created all appear to wear helmets and are either extremely muscular or have padded shoulders. They often carry scepters, perhaps denoting royal status. Serpents were often used to represent gods in many ancient cultures, but what was the origin of this belief? It's no surprise that so many people think that Earth was visited by lizard-headed aliens in the distant past. The Well of Santa Cristina. It's obvious that the Well of Santa Cristina in Pollitano, Italy, was an enormously important site for the people who built it. We just don't know why it was so important. It's too decorative and elaborate to have been a simple well, but we can't work out what its other purposes might have been. We don't even know its real name. We only call it the Well of Santa Cristina because of the 12th century church nearby, but the world was built much longer ago than that. It's around 3,200 years old and was most likely made by the Nuragic civilization who wanted to call Sardinia their own. Unfortunately, the Neurontic people had no written language, so understanding their ancient monuments is a little difficult. The well is surrounded by buildings that might have been dwellings with the central meeting point, but we can't know that for sure. The bottom of the well is accessed by a beautifully constructed stone staircase, and there's a space at the bottom that might have been a place for rituals to be conducted, but we can't say that for sure either. It's an enigma, but it's a very beautiful enigma. Relics left behind by ancient humans are typically broken, buried, and hard to identify, but then there are some that can make us completely rethink our place in history. Subscribe to the channel, turn on the notifications bell, and enjoy watching new videos on this channel. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you soon.
Now, pottery to an archaeologist is more valuable than silver and gold.
Now, all the other aspects that we talked about, the pyramids, fantastic. What if the pyramids were a power source?
Measuring the forces which it's producing.
We have inscriptions, we can look at the language and the style of the writing and be able to determine or have a really good guess of the type of people that lived there.
A modern day wind tunnel, they would have felt that it had lift, and they'd have definitely looked as to why it produced lift.
Let's say if you talked about 25 years ago about Bluetooth, or let's say the wireless.
Actually flew. We don't know.
Found in a vast burial site.
A bird is definitely the first step on the way to
controlling it in any way. You need the tail to keep it on the straight and level.
very sophisticated knowledge in other areas.
And right now we're at the point where We're pausing and we're going to start excavating the features, and then I think we're going to move to the western part of the site.
And ultimately, I can expose this thing. As I'm looking at it and clean it up, it's just a plain old rock. But there are a lot of these kinds of objects that we find in sites. Sometimes they're artifacts, sometimes they're just plain rocks.
Excavation units from the Phase 2 survey last summer.